Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. And we are still in virtual mode for these meetings, hoping to get back to in-person meetings as soon as we can here. Thanks for your patience and for joining us for this meeting. I would like to welcome Ryan Miller, who's or Ryan Waller. I think he said he was going to be on this meeting. Is he? Not yet. Okay. Well, he may still join us. Okay. Starting with our agenda this evening, we have two proclamations. The first one is for Employee Ownership Month. Is Stacy Kanoy with us?
I am.
Hi, Stacy. Okay, Stacy is with ESCO in Marion.
Yep.
And I've asked Councilmember Jensen to read the proclamation.
And it is indeed my pleasure to read this proclamation today. Whereas every October in communities across the nation, Employee Ownership Month is celebrated as a time to educate business owners and their employees about the advantages of employee stock ownership plans known as ESOPs. And whereas employee ownership is a business model in which employees of a company are beneficial owners of the employee stock. ESOPs are beneficial because they have the potential to boost a company's performance while also providing important retirement security for employees. And whereas with an ESOP, employees have an active voice in management. And whereas studies suggest that ESOP businesses have greater longevity in the marketplace and may reduce gender and wealth inequality. And whereas evidence suggests that these companies lay off fewer workers during downturns and are overall more profitable and productive. Therefore, workers can share in our nation's financial growth and prosperity because ESOPs help them to accumulate wealth. Now, therefore, I, Steve Jensen, on behalf of Nicholas Abuasli, Mayor of the City of Marion, do hereby recognize October 2021 as Employee Ownership Month and encourage residents to recognize the importance and benefits of employee ownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jensen. Stacy, would you like to say anything?
I guess I would just take a couple minutes. First of all, thank you so much for having ESCO here today. I can only speak to you with regards to ESCO's experience as far as the ESOP goes. I know it was years ago that Ray and Dave Engel, our then CEO, spoke of it, and we just weren't ready for it at that time. But as Ray became CEO and worked with the company a lot more, almost 5 years ago, we were ready for it. And I would just want to explain that it has really changed a lot of the energy in our company. And what it has done is it's created this ownership culture. And that has helped us as far as making it through, because we have a certain independence here. Ray has always promoted that kind of a culture anyway, but now we also have this responsibility because we have stake in the game, right? So we get really excited when we talk about it. And as our employees learn more and more about it, it just continues to snowball into a certain energy. And, and we're super proud to say, hey, we made it through the pandemic with no layoffs on our ESOP side. And that is something that our competitors just can't say. So it's a pretty exciting thing for us, and we're really proud of it. We have employee-owned companies in Marion, as you guys know, probably with Hy-Vee and Timberline Manufacturing, Carroll Construction Supply, Farmers National Company, and I'm sure there's a lot more. So it's a really exciting time for us. So, and I just thank you and just want to communicate the energy that we have for ESOP.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for that and for joining us to accept the proclamation. We have a number of excellent companies, both in Marion and in the region, that are employee owned, and it's just a great model. And we're happy to make the proclamation today. We'll be delivering it to Ray at ESCO tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. The other proclamation we have on the agenda this evening is for Gentleman Day, and I believe we have several people here from a Waypoint. Nellie Hill. Hi, Nellie.
Yep.
And is Alexis also with us?
He is not.
Okay. Okay, so Nellie's here to accept the proclamation for Gentleman Day. Whereas 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence during her lifetime, and whereas intimate partner violence impacts victims, children, family, friends, and the community at large. And whereas domestic violence is not confined to any group or groups of people, but is experienced in all economic, racial, ethnic, educational, societal, and religious groups, and is sustained by societal indifference. And whereas perpetrators of domestic violence should be held accountable for their actions, and victims should have access to support and services to help them overcome their experience. And whereas it is important to recognize the compassion and dedication of the individuals who provide support to victims of intimate partner violence and work to increase public understanding of this significant problem. And whereas a coordinated effort from all community members is needed to put a stop to this heinous crime. Now, therefore, I, Nicholas Abu-Asili, Mayor of the City of Marion, Iowa, do hereby proclaim October 19, 2021 as Gentleman Day to support Waypoint services in ending domestic violence and urge everyone to work together to eliminate domestic violence from our community. Nellie, would you like to say anything?
Sure. I just want to thank the Marion community for supporting Waypoint. Waypoint's Domestic Violence Victim Services Program serves anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 victims of domestic violence each year. We serve 7 counties in Northeast Iowa, and we could not do the important work that we do in safety planning, peer counseling, support groups, legal advocacy, medical advocacy without the support of our community. So we really appreciate you in this proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here to accept the proclamation, and we will deliver it to you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, proceeding with our agenda this evening, the first page with the consent agenda portion, there are no items marked for discussion, first and second page through section B. Are there any particular items in that part of the agenda that anyone would like to discuss in particular or have questions on?
Your Honor, just a quick comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
Yes, thank you. On item A4, regarding the departmental monthly reports, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to prepare those and issue those out on a monthly basis. Those, at least from my vantage point, are extremely informative. So I appreciate that. And I don't always get a chance to read them by the time they are issued in the first meeting that we have, but they do set a backdrop for at least the things I'm thinking about for the ensuing month. So thanks again.
Thanks, Grant. I agree with that statement. It's great to see those reports and just have a good sense of what everyone's working on. It helps us to understand how busy our departments are and our staff is. So, okay. We are at section C on page 2. There is one item that is marked for discussion. Is that Chief Kitzmiller?
It is, Your Honor. I'm sorry, I got a little bit of a cold, so if I start fading out, somebody yell at me and I'll speak up again. What I wanted to look for from the council is approval to restructure how we pay our sergeants. I'm not looking to raise the pay cap, but I think we need to create a step process so sergeants can reach that cap quicker. This will help alleviate the pay compression issues, which have been a result of having bargaining unit raises kind of outpace those given to non-bargaining employees. It'll help assist with employee retention, and it'll provide an incentive for qualified individuals to seek out leadership positions in the department. We have 11 sergeants on the department now, and 2 of them are already at the pay cap. What I'm proposing will not affect the 2 that are already at the pay cap, and they'll continue to get pay for performance bonuses like all other non-bargaining employees. This will impact the other 9 sergeants, with the newest one seeing the largest increase to their pay, which would take place in April of 2022 if this is approved. That's normally when the pay for performance raises or bonuses kick in. This is just be a way of adjusting that. A lot of this is in your memo. I can give you a quick recap. A patrol officer with 20 years of service makes $78,000, $78,610 per year. Next year, that's going to climb to $80,929. In July of 2023, that'll go up again to $83,235. And those are all scheduled as part of the newest 3-year contract that they signed. We currently have a corporal who's covered by the bargaining unit who makes $84,994. With the raises afforded in the current 3-year contract, he'll be earning $89,995 in 2023. At his current salary, he earns more than 8 of our 11 sergeants. Because he's in the bargaining unit, he gets to bid on his shift. He does some program management responsibilities, but he doesn't have near the responsibility over personnel that we place it on the shoulders of our sergeants. So it seems a little lopsided to have him at that level with our sergeants not making as much. With all that said, money should not be the sole or primary motivator for someone to seek out a leadership position with the department, but it should also not dissuade individuals from doing so. We ask a lot from our sergeants, and they carry a fairly large amount of responsibility, so we need to ensure we're compensating them appropriately. As it stands today, 4 of our 11 sergeants we have on board now only make between $13 and $50 more per pay period than they would have earned had they stayed in the bargaining unit. 3 others who are sergeants now currently earn less than they would have made had they stayed in the bargaining unit. Again, that compression issue is what's causing a lot of this. When somebody's in the bargaining unit, the guys that are getting promoted to sergeants, they've got, because they have seniority, they've gotten generally good days off, what we call good days off, and good shifts. They're on day shift, they're getting weekends off, or at least a Saturday or a Sunday off. And they've earned that because they've been around. When they take the test and become a sergeant and leave the bargaining unit, they go right back to working overnights with Monday and Tuesday off and bad days off. So we've got to find a way to somehow sweeten the pot a little bit for these guys. What I'm proposing to do is go to a 5-step pay scale for sergeants, which will essentially give them 3% pay raises each year for 5 years, which will bring them to the pay cap. Once they reach that pay cap, they'll revert to the normal pay for performance bonuses. They'll be eligible for step increases so long as their performance meets expectations. If it doesn't, they won't be awarded the step increase for that year. If approved, the sergeants currently on board will see their pay increased in April to one of the 5 steps outlined in the memo, and that would be under that second chart on the memo. And then they'll be eligible for the step increases so long as their performance meets expectations. The initial adjustments are being timed to coincide with the regular pay for performance raises that they would have gotten anyway. All of the sergeants that will see those adjustments would be to get to that closest step. We'll see at least a 2.5% raise in April. The average the sergeants have been getting over the last 3 years is about 2.3%. So we're fairly close to what they were getting in the past. Once we get them on those steps, they'll increase every year up till they hit that pay cap. I've talked to the sergeants. I've explained to them why some of them are going to get a bigger raise than others. They understand that if we're going to do this, we have to kind of level set this first year. So there's going to be some that are going to get bigger raises this first go around than the others, and they seem to be okay with that. Looking at the cost, the two charts, the top one on your memo, it shows you what the sergeants are currently making. I went ahead and scheduled that out for 5 years. I used a pay per performance raise or bonus of 2.5%. Again, they've been at like 2.3% for 3 years, but I went with the 2.5. The bottom chart shows you what would happen if we did go to these steps, and then the numbers in red show you the increased cost every year. It would be $17,000 this first year, $20,000, $24,000. The total is going to be $106,000 over 5 years. After I sent that in, I was reminded that one of the sergeants that's already capped out is on the drop plan, and he'll actually be gone in 3 years. So that total figure is going to drop by probably $15,000 over the 5-year period. So you'd be roughly at $90,000 is what it will cost us over 5 years. We recently lost a sergeant that went to Cedar Rapids. It's getting competitive, and I think this is a way to kind of keep us competitive. We went through and looked at what the other agencies in Lynn County, the metro area, were doing as far as the pay raises from their top earning patrol officer to the sergeants. That average is about 11%, an 11% jump. It went everywhere from 8% with one agency all the way up to 16% with another. If we go to these step increases and we start off at 85,000, at least for this year, that'd put us at 8.5% pay raise over the top patrol officer, which I think puts us in the ballpark with these other agencies. I think down the road, the pay caps are going to have to be looked at some point, but that's probably a bigger project that's bigger than me, and it's going to take a lot more work. But I think for the sergeants, this is my immediate need that I need to take care of, and so that's why I asked for this.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Okay. No questions.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Grant.
just I think so that $106,000 impact over 5 years. So that just nominally scales out to $21,000 on average per year as we would be working through this. I just wanted to at least illuminate my rudimentary mathematics.
Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Chief. So you talked about all of these pay scales that is on the screen of each year having a 3% bump. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So I just did a rough calculation of year 4 to year 5. That to me is only coming up to be about 1.5%, not 3%.
Correct, because that 95,314 is actually the cap, and I didn't want to raise the cap and go above that. So that's why I stopped at that 95,314.
Okay, then explain to me the definition of your cap again and why you want to stop there.
The pay cap is established by the city on what
Okay.
the most an individual can make in a certain job occupation.
So
So
that
for
is the
the-
cap for the sergeant position. Then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I understand that.
Anyone else? Any other questions on this for the chief? Okay, Chief, do you have anything to add, or is that it?
No, sir, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on with the remainder of the consent agenda. There are no items marked for discussion by staff on the remainder of the regular consent agenda, which is through the middle of page 5. Are there any items in particular that any council members have questions on or would like to discuss prior to the abstention agenda? Okay, For the next section, then I will turn over the meeting to the Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. The Mayor Pro Tem is on the honor flight today, so.
Okay, so with the consent agenda with Mayor Abbasali's abstention, none of these are marked for discussion. Are there any of these items that anybody wishes to discuss?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, I have one or two questions in that group.
Go ahead, Grant.
Okay, thank you. This would be for Ryan Miller, and it is B1 under Public Services. I'm just curious, is this the last payment to Wendling Quarries for the storm debris disposition?
It is. This will be the last payment.
Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you. That was my only other question. And if I can, I'll just get my other one. And it's on regarding F1. And Tom, I think maybe you're the best guy to help me on this one. I notice on the invoice for the airport consulting work from HDR, it's just kind of a general billing, number of hours worked and at the billing rate. Is it possible for HDR to give us a little more context as to the specific work scope they accomplish in any hours worked for us as we continue on in that contract?
Yeah, that's, I can work with Jerry and HDR to get that accomplished. I know we're getting down to the end of that contract, so we can do a kind of a round robin on that, make sure we got everything covered and know where we are. Absolutely.
Okay, it looks like we've got about half of that expended. And so I know they've got some defined scope in that contract. So if they can just say, well, it was on economic impact or technical design or whatever, that'll focus us in as to what they were spending their time on. Thank you. That's all I've got.
All right, thanks, Grant. Does anybody else have any questions on this section? Okay, seeing none, we'll move back to the mayor with the regular agenda.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, under the regular agenda, under administrative services, there's one item that is not marked, which is the new city manager's contract employment agreement. Any questions on that? I do want to say thank you to everyone who's been so accommodating and helping Ryan with whatever questions he has and whatever things he needs help with, especially Kirsten and Kara, who have brought this employment agreement to a final form, working with Ryan so that we can approve it on Thursday. I appreciate everyone's work on it, and look forward to everyone helping to accommodate and help in the onboarding process as Ryan joins our team. So thank you to everyone. If there's no questions on the employment agreement, we'll move on to engineering. First item is marked for discussion by the staff. Third Avenue reconstruction. Is that Mike Barkalow?
Yes, Your Honor. So this is our Third Avenue project that will be broken into two phases. We did go out for competitive quotes. Rachi Construction was our low bid at $1,544,679.60, which was 99.93% of the engineer's estimate. The dates of the two stages are there on the screen. I would welcome any questions. On Thursday, we'll have an actual public hearing to award the contract.
Okay, questions for the city engineer? All right. Item E3 is not marked. Any questions on that? Okay, F1 under community development is marked. Public hearing regarding the comprehensive plan amendment. Is that Tom or?
We're gonna go
No, that
ahead.
will be
Nicole's gonna go.
Nicole.
me this
Hi.
evening. Yep. Hi.
Hi, Nicole.
So yeah, on Thursday, we will have a public hearing for this item, but I will kind of briefly go over our East Marion sub-area plan. So master planning for the community has been integrated into Marion, into the 2021-2023 strategic plan for Marion. And that's to help integrate sub-area plans into Marion's comprehensive plan. So the East Marion sub-area plan is located east of Highway 13, just north of Highway 151 to Fresnel Road. And then it does extend to Hinman Road. So you can see that on the right-hand side of the screen. The dashed line does show where those current city limits are located. The sub-area is one of many identified as a key location for sub-area planning throughout the city, especially due to the growth that's been occurring in this vicinity. Staff has worked with RDG Planning and Design to develop the sub-area plan, which is meant to be used as a land use guide for future development that includes land use restrictions based on the airport overlay as well. So this plan focuses on approximately 160 acres that are within the city limits, while including about 375 acres of county land in a broader context. So the city does have the ability to land use plan beyond our city limits to 2 miles out. So our current comprehensive plan and future land use map go out towards the east to Jordan's Grove Road and just north of County Home Road on our north side, and then down to Cottage Grove on the south side. Nicholas, if you could please go to the next slide. Thanks. So as far as our site analysis within the summary of the sub-area plan, RDG along with staff input, they looked at the site by doing a site visit and through imagery. On the left-hand side, that image shows drainage assumptions. Those were done at a high planning level, meaning there was no hydrology study completed with the sub-area plan. Drainage is shown in the blue with the ridge lines shown in the orange there. So you can kind of see where the water in this area kind of is flowing to, and the thicker the line, the more water that is collecting. Also on the screen, you can see down towards Highway 151, the circles in red. There's 3 of them there. They would be kind of a full access or signalized intersection in the future, with the yellow 2 being more of a limited access or unsignalized intersection. As far as vehicular and pedestrian connections from the developments to the west of the sub area, they're shown in green and gray in that left image, the different arrows there. This is a very important context to the overall sub area, was incorporating those existing neighborhoods with the proposed plan. The image on the right shows in the purple hatched section where we would have sewer service provided at a later date, as currently we wouldn't be able to service that area. And then also overlaid on that aerial is the airport restriction zones, just based off of the end of the runway there, and where the different height limits and land use compatibilities kind of fall within this planning area. As far as the concept, speaking with stakeholders within the city limits, we walked through what land uses we're wanting to be seen out here, which ones that didn't, and then other aspects such as walkable and connected neighborhoods through vehicular access, making sure that it incorporates a variety of land uses both on a community scale and neighborhood scale, as well as access to open space being balanced within the development. And from the plan, you'll see that that's done in the form of greenways and stormwater management. Nicholas, can you go on to the next slide, please? Thanks. So this is the sub area plan here, up in the top left-hand corner in that kind of purple blue shade would be the school and city-owned property. That's approximately 26 acres. As you can see, RDG has overlaid, I believe that would be Lynn Grove, kind of the outline of that Linmar said that's kind of their standard for a layout. They've located that on the site as well, showing some parking. The school and city property, the idea with this is that they would share some of those park amenities with the playground and possibly some parking area as well. Moving on to the rest of the plan, the red kind of color on the north by Fernald Road and then along Highway 151, it would be kind of a mixed use commercial multifamily. So along Fernald Road, it would be a heavier use of multifamily with in that mixed use component, either being a lower level or commercial nodes in the corners of them. And then along Highway 151, it would be heavier with the commercial side of it and less on the multifamily. The light yellow would be single family detached residential, with the orange color being single family attached residential. Excuse me. As far as what's located within the city limits, within that residential area, the detached, we would be looking at approximately 147 units and 134 for, 147 for attached units. So that would be the orange. And then in the light yellow, 134 detached. Again, with how I mentioned that greenway, you can see going up from the north, curving down and around the area, we do have stormwater management practices in place where the drainage is kind of being collected in that nice greenway and flowing to more of a regional basin that can be used as an amenity for this entire area. And then there's also some pocket parks kind of located within some of the single family neighborhoods kind of leading to the greenways, and then some pocket parks that wind through the attached residential as well. As far as the large green open space kind of in the middle of the plan, that would be due to the airport overlay district, just on the south side of Highway 151 and just kind of crossing, just north of that, on the south side of that first road and then crossing just over. It is the no build zone for the land use restrictions. And then just north of that, our consultant on the airport said the best uses would be large acre residential lots or warehouse industrial. That was not something that any of the stakeholders were wanting to see out in this area, especially with the industrial area just to the south of 151. So they have shown that as a large park, passive green space, public or private. They said it could also be used as an orchard, urban agriculture, different things like that. Nicholas, thank you. So then these images kind of show some of the character that's wanting to be seen out in this area, especially that area within the city limits. So starting up in that top left-hand corner is out in Colorado. Stapleton, it's one of their kind of greenway or pocket park neighborhoods that they've got there. Then we've got Gray Station in Des Moines, just south of that image. Again, showing a different style of attached residential up against kind of that neighborhood pocket park. And then they've also shown some other natural kind of areas and how to incorporate residential with the green spaces right outside the door and not necessarily having to have those large parks intermittent, but by having kind of that green space for everybody to use as kind of part of their yard, especially in some of the lots in that more detailed area within the city limits. Some of the lots do get a little on the smaller side, and so this does allow for the residents to have more of an expanded yard. So by planning for the future of this area, not only within the city limits, but extending out and looking at the area as a whole, we're able to look at that road network, pedestrian network, which are both beneficial. It helps us make sure that property owners aren't kind of being cut off from any sort of road network when planning is occurring and when development is occurring. It also provides property owners, future landowners, kind of an idea of what's envisioned for the area. So when they are wanting to sell or develop the land, there is a starting point for conversation. And this plan does not say that those out in the county are being brought into the city. That's on their terms. If they want to come in and sell their land to a developer, that's their prerogative. They can do that next week, in 3 years, or in 25 plus years. So this plan is just to help kind of guide land use wise. That focus area of the 160 acres within the city limits, with that broader context of how a street network would be laid out and how that kind of connects to Hinman Road for now, Highway 151, just to make sure that the land uses are compatible, not only with each other, but with that airport overlay district. And then making sure that everyone has some sort of network in and out of the area, not being left as an island. Staff did hold a public hearing prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We did have some comments from residents in the area prior to that meeting, at that public hearing and after. Most of the comments that we heard had to deal with developing prime farm ground. Again, the land out in the county, this is not a development plan, it's a land use plan. So when they're wanting to sell, that's up to them, and that's when the development would happen. The city is not saying this plan is happening within the next 2 years, the entire area, prime farm ground is going to be developed. That is up to those property owners of when they'd want to develop their land. Other concerns raised were more specific to how does this affect their land, and if it's classified on the land use map as residential versus commercial, do they have to let people know if they do happen to sell their property? Again, it's out in the county, so anything that they'd have to divulge is all kind of county based, and the county does have greater restrictions on egg land than if they were in the city. That's all for kind of the presentation. If you've got questions of staff.
Thank you, Nicole. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I did have a couple of people contact me that live along Hinman Road,
Mhm.
and they were very complimentary of the staff and how the staff answered their questions. So I thought that was done very well. Nicole, my question is if we can go back to the sub area map showing the land use. So the 160 acres that we're talking about that is it was just recently annexed. Where is that line on this map? How does that get divided?
Yeah, so it's hard to see on the sub area plan map, but the westernmost north-south road is relatively on that line. It does kind of curve off the city boundary just to add some interest to help create more of a neighborhood feel. It also helps slow traffic down since it's not a straight shot through, but it does kind of generally run through that. Nicholas, if you want to go up to the first slide. So that dashed line kind of shows you where that area is bisected.
So if you're talking about this road going north-south, you got a pretty good piece of that road, especially on that knob that sticks out to the furthest east. That right now would be on county land.
Correct. Yep.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so how feasible is that to have that sign in there at this time?
That would come down to developers. A lot of times They make agreements with neighboring property owners on maybe land swapping. With this just being a plan, it hasn't been fully designed out. The idea would be to kind of meander that road. Doesn't always go from kind of a land use plan sub-area concept like this into engineering design and come out the other end looking exactly the same as what this plan would show. But it helps give an idea of where kind of that a collector road would be located.
So you primarily have it with that little knob on the right side, more for slowing down traffic. So if any landowner on that side did not want to do anything and development started occurring faster, then is there a chance that that road would straighten out just to
Yes,
accommodate the
there would be a,
development to the
yep.
west? Okay. I anticipated that, but I wanted to make sure I'm understanding where this line was on the 160 acres. Thank you, Nicole.
yeah, you're welcome.
Grant?
Thank you, Your Honor. If we can maybe advance one slide. Yeah, perfect. And Nicole, you may want to volley this to Tom or Mike. But my question is, in that cross-hatched red no build area showing essentially at the end of the runway area and heads to the northeast. If we change the length of the runway from its present length up to, I think, 4,000 feet, which has been contemplated, does that change that no build area as well as the additional adjacent area for low density residential or warehouse?
No, when we zoned for the airport, the overlay covered the 4,000-foot runway going, essentially extending north of Airport Road. We did not extend the zoning protection south for the 5,000-foot runway, but yes. So that is incorporated into this design.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. So, I love when we're being forward-looking and planning. So this is terrific, and thank you for all your work on it. My question is, there's a significant portion of it along 151, which is an entryway to our city. At what point do we talk about design standards and what construction along that stretch should look like, so we don't end up with metal buildings as we've ended up with on Highway 13? At what point does that happen? I mean, does it happen now before developers start buying it up, or?
No, that design standards come with the zoning, and if there's the city has certain standards and different areas. We don't have a solid design standard across all zoning district classifications. As you'll recall, we've got some PUD ordinances that we do enforce design standards with. We've got some overlays that we do in the corridor and out on the neighborhood at Indian Creek. As this property develops, zoning will come next. The zoning should be reflective of the land use plan. We generally try to incorporate the design standards of other commercial areas into the rezonings. Ideally, though, we would have design standards established for our commercial areas that are just base value. This is the minimum standard required. So as if there are desires for that, and I know there's been conversations back and forth on it over the years, that's something that we would need to develop outside of the protocol and put them in place for in the zoning code just for across the board. Generally, what we're seeing are rezonings that are coming in at a PUD, the planned unit development, and we attach those standards to those documents. But this would not be the time. I think within the document, and Nicole, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is an indication that there are some standards. There should be some design aesthetics to the buildings and structures as they because it is at a gateway and because they're along arterials. But that would be driven by the zoning. specifically. So,
Okay.
Yep.
And with these current uses that have been identified, what's the potential that we'll end up with storage garages along this stretch? None?
Well, I mean, it would come down to how the property does get zoned. This just being part of the comprehensive plan and as a land use guide, it doesn't zone any of the properties. So when projects do come in and when zoning requests do come in, as long as they're not going industrial, that should help that warehouse concern. We do allow certain types of warehouse in our regional business zoning district. We do have some standards set in place though, as where those can be located, how far from property lines, that sort of thing. So when zoning does come in, we should be hopefully seeing some concepts with that and what they're wanting to do, how things are being laid out, utilized, and that should help give us an idea of what is fully being proposed. The area currently within the city limits, we can look at that in more of a near future, whereas, yeah, the stuff kind of outside of the city limits, things can be completely different by the time that's annexed in and developed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point in all of this is, if we're going through this and it's wonderful that we are, getting out ahead of it, planning, being very thoughtful about it. So presumably we won't end up with surprises as we have in the past, on occasion ended up with, something that may not have been ideal or whatever. And so whatever we have to do, since we're going through this planning process, at whatever point it's appropriate, whatever we have to do, I think that, my interest would be to make sure that we are doing the best that we can, going all the way that we can, and to ensure that the way we envision it looking, we do what's necessary to make sure that it turns out that way, instead of leaving it open and open to surprises and things that we're maybe settling for something that's good enough. So, okay, any other questions?
Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I just want to echo your sentiment on that. And I think it really comes down to setting the right expectations very early on so that we don't have a bunch of contention later on when somebody wants to do something. And that concept of 151 on the east end of Marion being a gateway holds very true given the traffic that thoroughfare has. So I support your sentiments in that regard.
Thank you. Other questions for Nicole or Tom? Or I see Dave is also on here.
I could say something.
Go
What
ahead,
I
Tom.
think would be great, and I just because we haven't done a land use plan like that this in some time. I think the last time we did, we talked a lot about zoning as it related to the neighborhood in Indian Creek. Remember, we did a land use plan like this in like 2009, 10, and then we came back and actually created a zoning district plan. It was a planned development out on the northeast side of town that really spoke to all the things that I think you're talking to. I don't know that we were there with this plan. That took about 8 or 9 years before we went from land use plan to zoning. But what I do think would be good, and Nicole and Dave will throw things at me if we're in the same room. But I think what we can do, and I think it would be good for the council, we haven't really visited it in a while, is just talk about where we are with design standards, where we have them, where we don't. And if there's direction from council, I think it would be fairly easily accomplished to provide some general override, zoning standards, because we're using them in our commercial areas currently fairly quickly. But I would certainly want the council to direct us to do that. And I'd also, there generally is a little pushback in that realm, but if we get council support to move in that direction, I think that's something we could accomplish rather quickly. So and now I'm going to have to run out of the building because Dave and Nicole are going to chase me. But needless to say, I think we can get to where you're talking.
I love your suggestion. Send me the calendar invite. I'll be there.
Well, I'd like to do it for the whole council. So we'll
No,
do
I
it.
know, I'm just saying, but, I mean, not just me. I'm saying,
Yep.
I
Yeah.
think it's a great idea. I think the more we can all be on the same page on these types of things before they become a matter of contention with the developers, with people who want to do projects. You know, I think we're all better served. The city's better served.
If I
Okay.
could just say one other
Go ahead.
thing, and I don't want to derail the conversation or change the subject, but one of the keys to this plan, and I think it's important to note, you've seen a lot of areas called commercial/multifamily, and they're adjacent to the higher traffic areas. Ideally, we would like to see those develop with the higher density apartment condominium style of development with the commercial mixed in there. I think the council's heard me say, and you've certainly seen it in the news, we have a serious housing issue. I think in many areas you will hear it called a crisis. We do not have enough housing to house folks moving here. We're completely underserved in the housing market right now. The demand is exceeding the available units. So what we have seen is there's a lot of challenges to rezoning property in pre-zoned areas for that. So we're creating a wider ranged area where it's commercial multifamily. Generally, you see if you drive around Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, Chicago, what you see are the larger multifamily areas with the peppering of commercial within them to provide service to the higher density folks. So by opening up that land use category, it opens up that availability for the zoning. Now, we've gotten a little pushback at the public hearings on this concept, and I would suspect that we'll probably hear some on Thursday, but I just wanted the council to be aware of that situation. So it says commercial multifamily. When the zoning comes forward, that would allow for the RM districts and the commercial districts to be intermixed in those land use designations. So that was done on purpose. And it was to fill a need and a gap in the community and provide for those mixed use neighborhoods within the new areas. So anyway, that's just something that may come up. I just wanted you to be aware of.
Good information to have. Thanks for providing that. Any other questions on this item? Okay. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you to all of you for your work on this. Okay. F3 is also marked for discussion. Is that Dave?
Nope, that would be me still.
You also, Nicole? Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
So Summit Properties and Development Company, Inc. are seeking approval of their exterior alterations through the Central Corridor review process for the KFC located at 1925 7th Avenue. You can see the location map there on your screen. So within the Central Corridor, we do have a review process for substantial improvements to existing properties. This does include things such as altering the exterior color or facade material and the appearance of the roof. So those are things that are occurring with the KFC location as a part of their branding update. And within the UTC 1 district, which this is located in, again, we do require that it goes through this Central Corridor review process. The intent within that district is to help promote commercial development, which respects adjacent residential properties. So some of the standards for review include building setback and form, height and pedestrian scale, parking, and architectural style and facade materials. So regarding the setbacks and form, this really isn't applicable in this situation as the overall site layout, parking lot, drive-through, landscaping are not being proposed to change with this project update. However, the height and pedestrian scale, on the screen you can see, oh, go back one, please. Yep, thank you. The Google Street View there on the left-hand side, you can see the existing stripped pyramid on top of the parapet roof. that will be removed as proposed within this project. That does alter the height and roof line of the building. It would provide more of a flat roof line of that parapet wall, which would blend in more so with the rest of the building. This roof line alteration, the height of it, it still keeps it within the UTC-1 code requirements for height. As for the pedestrian scale, the updated exterior will allow for the expansive walls on the east and west sides of the building to be broken up with the use of color variations, helping provide, again, for that pedestrian scale of the walls. You can go to the next slide now, Nicholas. Thank you. So architectural, or for parking, again, not a part of this review as it's not changing. Then architectural style and facade materials. Up on the screen is the proposed kind of motif with their updated branding. Within the design standards of the Central Corridor Zoning District Code section, we do encourage light, muted, earth tone colors being used as that primary color, with saturated or bright hues as accents. So the primary color of this exterior will be white and a lighter gray color, with the dark gray outlining windows and the base of the building. And then the currently fabric awnings will be replaced with more of a red Caribbean style shutter. And as you can see with the west and east elevations, they've got some sort of like striping effect going on, and that does help kind of break up those large expansive walls and provide that pedestrian scale. As far as signage goes, it was a part of kind of the proposed package for updates. With that branding, they are gonna be repainting all of the existing sign cabinets, the existing pull sign, and then they'll be replacing the current faceplates of those signs with the updated branding. As you can see on the elevations, they will be adding some signage on the west elevation. At a first glance, the signage that they are proposing does meet with our current sign regulations and those of the Central Corridor. When the sign permits do come in for staff review, it will be reviewed internally. They won't go in front of the commission or in front of council for final approval, but they are kind of showing what they will be updating with these elevations. Any questions on the Central Corridor review for KFC's exterior alterations?
Questions?
I do, Your
Go ahead,
Honor.
Renee. Yes.
Thank you. Nicole, could you go back a slide? I think it's just one slide, or whomever. Yeah. So you mentioned the signage will change out the faceplate to reflect the new logo. What about the digital piece beneath? Is that part of the sign revision in this overlay in the corridor district?
I do believe that in their proposed project, they mentioned the digital message board, updating it because it is in place. It's kind of seen as being grandfathered in, just like the pole sign. We would allow them to kind of update that or make it smaller. We would not allow them to enlarge that digital message center. If they did decide to remove it completely, they would not be able to put one back in the future.
But we can't, since they're changing the sign, technically, I realize it's two things that are the same size of something that's there. We can't just make the sign reflect our current standards since they're touching it.
Currently, with it being grandfathered from the staff review perspective, we would allow that because it was included within the proposed package and request. That is something that could be asked of. I know the Planning and Zoning Commission did bring up the pole sign and the chicken bucket that has been removed already. But they were asking questions about making it into a monument sign. This is a hard corner. With visibility, monument signs need to at least sit 5 feet back. There's not a ton of space on this site to help allow for those kind of required setbacks of monument signs. If that was the direction you were wanting to kind of recommend and
Yeah, I
condition.
remember, I think I was on P and Z when we talked about the signage in this area, so it's a little near and dear to me. I understand that it's grandfathered in and, maybe staff can't push on that. I don't know if any other council members have an appetite to do so. I personally feel like it'd be great, since they're touching the sign, to have them make the sign look the way that that it says in our design standards. I also understand the nature of the grandfather clause, and I think that the building redo is an improvement. So just wanted to ask about it and see if anybody else felt strongly. Thank you, Nicole.
I guess my view on that is, did we ask? I mean, we should at least ask if that's important to us, I mean, the answer maybe we're not prepared to do that, or maybe it's too late now, but, if it can't hurt to ask and ask people to consider upgrading something, I always think it's worthwhile to do that. Any
The
other?
commission did talk with the applicant on the signage as well, and he said that, yeah, the monument sign or doing upgrades like that were not within the scope of work or plan, but if that's the direction that moved forward, that's something that he would take back to them.
Grant, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess in terms of entering into a discussion with our businesses that are redeveloping their property or enhancing the exterior of the building, I think that's a worthy inquiry to make, to say, can they also then do things to visually enhance any and all of their signage? If I just think about the evolution of 7th Avenue, long ago in a galaxy very, very far away, I was a new teacher in 1977, and I brought a busload of track athletes through Marion to go to a meet over in Anamosa. And I remember my thought, generally speaking, about driving down 7th Avenue at that time was, man, this was a railroad and industrial kind of a endeavor. We've come a long way since 1977. And I think we just, given the work that's going on uptown, all of that, I think we have an obligation to see if businesses aren't in fact willing to do more than what a grandfathered condition would warrant. And I would just encourage that to be sort of a go forward mindset if that can be achieved. So Renee, that was a polysyllabic, multi-paragraph way of saying, I agree with you.
Good, thank you.
All right, Tom Trahorn has a comment.
Yes, I can tell you that both Nicole and Dave and I generally try to do as much as we can with signage. We changed the ordinance. Digital displays are no longer available on 7th Avenue. We worked it over pretty good when we redid that ordinance for signage. And we can double down on it too. I'm perfectly fine seeing where all that went as well. I do think what I would like to highlight, changing the subject a little bit, if you can go to the next slide, Nicholas. If you look at the sign where Colonel Sanders is, it's red and white striped. That building, but for our design standards, where the gray is, would be red and white striped. The entire building. That was the original proposal. So so as we talk about design standards and carrying it over from the other conversation, I mean, when we sit down with folks, this generally isn't the first shot across the bow, if you will. And there's a lot of conversations that go on as we talk about how a building looks and feels and works into the community, especially with the idea of the design standards we have in the corridor. So I indicated to Nicole that we should have done it before and after, but we're getting long, but in the tooth here. But I just wanted the council to know that, yeah, we are we're happy to have the standards we have, and it does lead to a better product that I think we can be proud of as it relates to a design aesthetic. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out as we look at it. If you get a chance and Google KFC, you can see their different design aesthetics across the country. And I think we got a good one. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that perspective. Any other comments? Okay. The next item is F4, and I will turn over the meeting to the Deputy Mayor Pro Tem for this item.
Okay.
All right. Who's got this? Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to participate tonight, I guess.
Go ahead.
This is the same process that Nicole had just gone into great depth on the KFC. This is the Junction Lofts. It's the site of the former Emirate Manufacturing that got relocated a few years back. Genesis Equities purchased the property and have been holding on to it for quite a while. And just like the KFC, we've looked at a lot of renderings and ideas on this property over the last, I'm going to say 2 years. And the developers brought forward the plan that we're going to see tonight. Ultimately, they're planning 2 multi-story buildings, a total of 20 units on the site. And it's pretty odd shape, as you can see. Oh, Nicholas, can I get the next slide, please? Oh, thank you. As you can see, it's a pretty odd shaped site. They've been able to acquire not just the Emirate site, but some of the adjacent pieces as well, including portions of 17th Avenue. I'm sorry, 17th Street running north-south, as well as 16th Street running north-south to the property. As you can see on the site plan there, again, I told you it's 2 buildings. One, I'm going to call it the west building, is oriented towards 6th Avenue, kind of running east-west. And then the east building next to Big Shots is kind of oriented north-south. The orientation is, and unfortunately it doesn't really show on the site plan too well, there's I believe it's a 30 or 33 foot easement running through the property along the old 17th Avenue right away. So I think storm, sewer, and water, I believe, storm and sewer are running through that site. While not impossible to relocate, very, very difficult, very, very expensive. So the developer's working around those existing sewer and sanitary lines to the property, and that resulted in the orientation of the east building being against Big Shots and not being oriented along 6th Avenue like the other building. Property is currently zoned UTR2, which is our urban transitional district. It allows a wide range of medium and high density multifamily. So the proposed use meets the zoning standards in place there. This UTR2 really replaced all that old C4, that warehouse commercial zoning that was in place. That was really, it was commercial zoning, but it really acted as warehouse, light industrial type district that we had along the railroad corridor. So this UTR2 zoning district replaced all of that. And it really runs almost the entire length between really this point all the way east to the roundabout. Between 5th and 6th Avenues. We have the lofts down the road, same zoning for multifamily. Like Nicole had talked about, anything in the central corridor goes through review, not just through staff, but ultimately through the Planning and Zoning Commission. Depending on where it's at, it may go through Uptown or Historic Preservation Commission group, but this one's just outside the Uptown district. So it just went to the Zoning Commission. We highlight a few items from the corridor. One is the building setbacks and form. Ideally, all buildings should be built up to the property line, and we give it a range of 7 foot to 15 foot front yard setbacks. The building is up on in that area between the 7 and 15 foot setbacks on 6th Avenue, the front yard, we're going to call it. It does meet all the side setbacks as well. And most of the side setbacks are really, they're all minimums. They can go further if they want, but it is minimums. The rear yard setback is a 20 foot when it's adjacent to residential. There are some residential homes on the site to the south, 2 homes and a commercial activity. So it does meet the 20-foot setbacks from those homes. If it was commercial uses or adjacent multifamily to the south, then the setbacks could be reduced. We just want to avoid having a 24, 30, 40-foot building up adjacent to a single family home. It's a pretty big wall in those situations. So we want to try to avoid that, and that's the setbacks from single family homes. Can you go to the next slide, Nicholas, please? When we talk a little bit about height and pedestrian scale, we want to make sure that as we orient these buildings on 6th Avenue or adjacent to other residential districts, that there's a scale that transitions well between the different uses. We're looking at, well, I guess all 4 elevations of both buildings are identical. We're going to focus on the bottom image first. This is the front side of the building. This is what will face 6th Avenue on the west building. And then elevation number 4, you see right elevation number 4, that would be the side of the building that will face 6th Avenue on the big shot side. It presents itself as a 2-story building, a little over 30 feet tall on the 6th Avenue side. And then on the rear side, it presents as a 3-story building. The top image there, that's the back sides of the building, because they're having the garages as a drive-under garage that will serve the residential in addition to the on-street parking. That rear building gets just a little over 40 feet from grade, so it's a significant building on the back sides. As part of the pedestrian scale, we looked for an obvious front door. Again, when you're looking at the bottom image, I think it's been pretty obvious. We put some emphasis over the 2 doors that serve the internal hallways in the middle there. Very obvious entrances to the building. The end units are actually 2-story units. Those are the 3-bedroom units. They have their own exterior access as well. So again, you can see, very pedestrian scale. It's not like you're coming up on a larger building. When we go down to the lofts down the road, they do have a front door on 6th Avenue, but it's kind of got lost in the building. They didn't have a brick change or material change. So that front door into the interior hallway got kind of lost. So as we've looked at other projects along the corridor, we try to make sure that there's a more emphasis on that, where those doors are at. Again, with material change or having it bump out more, or recess in, to give it an idea of a little more pedestrian scale that we might have failed a little bit on the loft side, on the 6th Avenue side. If we could go back 1 slide, Nicholas, please. In adjacent to the pedestrian scale, we also look for access, not just to the buildings, but to the site. The property is sidewalked all the way around the site. You'll notice the zigzagging along the west end of the project. That zigzagging sidewalk is a result of ADA requirements having to. It's quite a change in grade. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring a straight sidewalk down, so you got to zigzag it down to meet the slope requirements. Been quite a bit of discussions with our building department and the developer on that, and that's the solution you're going to get. There's really no way to avoid it. We do have to have access there, but the zigzagging will allow the slope to be maintained. There'll likely be a public access easement over those sidewalks, as it does ultimately connect into the 16th Street public sidewalk. So if you're walking from 5th to 6th, you still have pedestrian access to get through the block, because there's very few opportunities to do that as we see redevelopment. So there'll be a public access easement over those sidewalks, but they will be privately owned. A little bit about parking. I did say every unit does have its own garage. Apartments are required to have 1.5 spaces per unit. Units that have 3 bedrooms are required to have 2 parking spots. It has 16 total units requiring 1.5 spaces for a total of 24. And then it has 4 units with the 3 bedrooms requiring a total of 8 spaces. So the total site does require 32 spaces. The applicant is providing a total of 32 spots, 2 of those which are going to be ADA accessible. 20 of the spots are being provided by garage for those units. We have found our 1.5 to be adequate to serve apartments. if you get into a guest situation, it gets a little tighter on this site. There's no parking on 6th Avenue. There's, I believe, no parking or one side parking on 5th Avenue. So there are some limitations on if everybody showed up for Christmas on the same day and hosting it there, would be a parking issue, almost like any other neighborhood though as well. But they do meet the parking requirements. And if we go to the next slide again, Nicholas. Sorry, when I was writing this, I had a different way of doing things and then presenting it. It kind of jumps around a little bit. I talked a little bit about architectural materials. It's important that we don't get we're trying to avoid getting kind of a monotone elevations, just one color or one material. Looking at all the elevations, you can see they're using a variety of brick, stone, as well as cement siding on the rear sides and a little bit of access on the front. The 6th Avenue, the main front door elevations, it's quite a bit of material change on the site. As we look at the side profiles, it is a brick with windows. Initially, it started off as a solid brick, I believe, pushed to get the windows, and they also brought in that metal siding up top to help break that up. Again, elevation number 4 will be the front elevation onto 6th Avenue on the Big Shots side of the project. There will be landscaping to help soften that brick wall. The only other option would be to bring another material into it. But due to some slope issues, it's really difficult to access that side wall with the pedestrian access because of slope. If you've driven out there, if you drive out there tonight, maybe after the meeting, you'll realize you're really looking down onto the site quite a bit, and there's quite a bit of terrain issues to deal with. The back side, the garage side elevations, you can see they're really using almost 4 different materials on the back side. It is a flat, it's a flat wall, but I think with the variety of color and the variety of texture, it really does present itself as maybe a couple different buildings, or it presents itself being broken up a little bit, and that's something that is encouraged with the within the design code. Stormwater detention is always a big issue. If we go back, Nicholas, again, sorry. 17th Street is that long driveway from the south. The applicant has identified a detention area for the site for all the stormwater. That's not been sized yet. It will get sized with this final design, and the engineering department will review that to make sure it's sized appropriately for the stormwater created from the site. The commission did meet last week on this project. There was no public comments on it. They did recommend approval. There was just one discussion they brought up is like, we need to make sure that we're looking at park development throughout the community, but especially through our corridor as we see these multifamily projects. The larger ones obviously will have their own playgrounds possibly, but with the trail network, there's a Ezra Park to the south, which is very small and was damaged in the storm. There's a school nearby, but the commission just wanted to make sure that the council's aware that if we keep encouraging this type of development, and they want to, that we are providing some opportunity for lineal trails or lineal parks in these areas to help support families moving into these developments. There was quite a large notice. I did provide a map of the folks that were notified. I've only heard for 2. I don't think they were opposed. They just wanted to see what was going on. But this overlapped with the KFC notification as well. So it's quite a large notification. These are not public hearings, but I do suspect there may be a few people online Thursday that will probably want to talk about it at the beginning of the meeting. But we did go out with postcards quite a ways on this one, just again to make sure the folks are aware of the project. And with the Lofts project down the road, there was always a lot of concerns about parking and how that was going to work out. And so we wanted to make sure we captured a good, healthy portion of the neighborhood so they could see the project and comment on it they'd like. Any questions?
Dave, before we move on and
Oh, lots of hands.
get questions, can you identify the large green area in the southwest corner? Is that a green space, or is that the water?
That is the detention
area?
basin.
That's the detention basin?
Yeah, that is the detention basin there.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. Does anybody on the city council have questions for Dave on this project?
I do, Steve. Oh, sorry, my hand wasn't up. I can wait.
Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, just a couple, the parking thing. I know you said that the garage spaces count as a parking space. Prior to our work on 6th Ave, I believe that you could have parked on one side of that. And we've obviously, I think, eliminated that possibility with the recent redo. So where will overflow parking go in this general area?
Yep. The most available option for on-site would be in front of some of the garage doors. The south end of the Big Shots side of the project, there is some opportunity to park in front of the garages there, but that obviously that'd be only for tenants. After that, you're going to be on to Fifth Avenue and then the side streets.
And Fifth is parking on one side only. Is that true, or can you park on two?
I've seen people parking. I think it's only one side because I've seen people parking there. I'm not sure if they're parking legally, or I'll have to drive out in there and double check. I'm not sure if it's two-sided or one-sided out there, but I have seen people parking on the north side of Fifth Avenue in the past. So
The north
There's no
side.
parking on Fifth Avenue there.
What was that, Will?
There's no parking on Fifth Avenue in that location,
On
Okay.
either side?
neither side.
it was probably construction traffic that was parking there on the Lofts project. They were just parking there anyways. So
Yeah, so,
Okay, so no parking on
I don't
Fifth
know what the solution is, so I hate to just point out the problem, but I'm very concerned about parking and what it will do to the neighborhood. And then just the other little comment, if someone could advance to the next slide. The complete flat sides of the building, I think, will be very unattractive.
Mhm.
I'll leave it at that. I would love to see some texture, something over there. I think that they've done a really good job with, the other two facades in terms of materials and breaking it up and elevations, et cetera. I just feel like those look very institutional. And they're going to be, right along where we're doing a lot of really exciting projects in the city. So it'd be nice to see this fold in and be equally exciting. Those are my only two comments. Thanks.
pass those on.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you're on.
Steve, we got several hands up.
Oh, I'm not, yeah, my screen's not showing hands. So you got a question, Randy?
Yeah, I got a couple of them if I could, please.
ahead.
Dave, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of I got two questions before we move on to past the first question, but the properties adjacent to these in the bottom left corner and the bottom right corner, what kind of impact will this have on this for future resales of this property when the build out of this occurs, and future change to those locations? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, Nicholas, if I could have you back up to the next slide, please. The previous slide. All right, thank you. Yeah, the biggest, there you go. There's still a lot of development opportunity left. These are all pretty small lots, older part of town. Ideally, they get purchased and they get assembled into into a larger piece, into a development. As they sit now, they're only about 60 feet wide and not even 100 feet deep. So really, really difficult. The impact. In a perfect world, Genesis could have bought everything on this block and done the project on a full block, and it wouldn't be an issue. But there's still a lot of opportunities with 17th Street be purchased, and if pieces can be assembled, I think you can still get some quality redevelopment projects on this block. You just have to have willing property owners wanting to sell, and the city wanting to part with portions of 17th Street and portions of 16th Street that are still open to make a larger piece. There's still a lot of opportunities either side for redevelopment as you expand out beyond this block. And I think it's just gonna be time.
Sure. I was just concerned about resale values to the current owners on those, because those will be very less than appealing properties to purchase in the future. My second comment on this is my concern with only one in, one out. You've got a proposed fire hydrant in the very center of this parking area here. I've got grave concern, and I'd like to hear from the fire department's perspective, putting an apparatus in there to hook on that hydrant. When we have a large number of car fires in the city, you're putting all of these vehicles to the inner quadrant of this facility, which ultimately you would like to have a fire apparatus in there. But I would be scared to death to put one in there to get it locked in if there were to be a structure fire. I'd like to hear some perspective around that with a one in, one out with the size of capacity here. Thanks.
I believe the
Yes,
chief is on.
Go ahead, chief.
yes, this is Chief Crable. When this project first came to be, it really posed some issues for us as the fire department. What we would do with this site as is actually pre-plan in order to respond efficiently to this. With the upper level of the 6th Avenue and the 5th Avenue being a lower level, we were asking the builder to put a hydrant on 6th Avenue. We're also asking that the buildings be sprinklered. And as for the entrance only on one side, our engine would only pull to actually the end of the drive because we'd have to keep the distance out of the collapse zone for the engines. So we shouldn't have a problem with that. We really looked hard at this, and we hate having special pre-plans for certain developments. But in this instance, we know of a way that we can respond efficiently. And as long as they're sprinklering those buildings, we feel more comfortable with it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Grant, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So Dave, in the northwest corner of the development, you commented about the sidewalk structure that is there.
Yep.
And I notice our friends at Google Maps show that 16th Street basically terminates pretty much adjacent to the property that is on the northeast, or I'm sorry, closest to the northwest corner of this development where those sidewalks would go. Does that conceivably, does that residence closest to the sidewalk arrangement, does that go away?
The resident?
Yes.
No, that property actually will stay. We vacated all of 16th Street and basically mid-block north,
Right.
but we only sold the north 80 some feet. So we left, the city still owns the bottom, the south 40 of that little notch there. So the idea behind that was the folks to the south would have a way to get in and out of their driveways, backing up and backing north to go out south. But it would also allow for an access to the property to the west. Should he ever want to build a garage in the backyard, he could, or someday if a developer comes along and buys his piece and everything else to the west, they could have an access road or access drive via 16th Street, as well as something to the west, kind of over by the roundabout off of 15th. So the house will stay. The house is the grade won't change much. It'll actually be brought up level with the sidewalk on his side, and it'll exist as long as he wants to exist there.
Okay, so that house that is immediately adjacent to the sidewalk structure is really addressed to 6th Avenue, and their current driveway enters from 6th Avenue, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thanks. That helps me understand the lay of the land there. Appreciate it.
Anybody else with questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Will.
The water or the rain, the stormwater detention, is that going to be dry or wet?
I'm assuming it'll be dry just for maintenance reasons.
And that'll be,
it's not been designed yet or anything like that, so we don't know specifics on it, but I assume it'll be dry. It will not be a big basin.
it will not be a big basin. So that might be smaller than what it's showing there.
Yeah, once you get the final design, I think actually those just came in yesterday or today, maybe I haven't even looked at them yet. Yeah, they'll have it sized appropriate. So there might be opportunities to pick up some parking in there when it's all said and done.
Yeah, that was a question. Well, I've had that homeowner to the left there, to the west of the basin area. I've talked to him, not about this project, but about other issues. And now there's a lot more stormwater that runs down through that area with 6th Avenue getting developed. So I just worried about that. Hopefully this will help alleviate some of the issues that are happening to the north of that.
Yeah.
And then as far as overflow parking, I'm sure people are probably going to park on 16th, which the two homeowners there are probably not going to be happy with overflow parking in front of their house and their driveways, and where there's nothing. Well, actually, I think there might be no parking at one side right now, but it might be.
You're correct.
Might be good to make it no parking on the whole thing, just so that we don't have all this overflow parking over here. But and Randy, so that's a house to the west. You asked the house to the west, and then to the right or to the east is a garage, cars getting fixed, and then a house right to the east of that too, and then the Big Shots parking lot. You had asked earlier what those businesses were, so and then house to the west of the car shop, it just sold this summer, so it's got a new owner in it now. So that'd be my concern, is that the parking, and then hopefully the water, this retention basin can accommodate all the water, because like I said, there's more coming off of 6th Avenue now.
Yeah. Well, I will reach out to the developer here right after this meeting. I'll shoot him an email and discuss hopefully find some parking opportunity as well as design on the end caps, and then just ensure stormwater is being addressed. Like those are the 3 takeaways I think I heard. So I'll make sure that they're addressed.
I think the only other comment I would add, Dave, is I think you added it and had it in your summary of the 3 items is those end views of the building really need some aesthetic improvement. Again, they've done a nice job with the other colors and mixture of materials on the front and the back, and I think it's going to be fairly easy to do on the end caps and make that buildings look a lot better. Right, everybody, any other questions?
I see Randy still has his hand up. Okay.
Yep.
Yes, I'm not seeing hands, so just throw your hand up, Randy.
No problem. Thank you. Just one last quick question here.
Yeah.
With this being a traditional dead end versus a cul-de-sac, I would also like to try to see a no parking on this for snow removal purposes in the wintertime. I'm not quite sure where the snow stacking would go on this. Ryan could touch base on that, but I'd probably be looking at favorable no parking on both sides, especially in the wintertime for snow removal, but perhaps I could be having some more conversation.
Is this for 16th Street?
16th Street.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll put that note down as well.
Thank you very much.
One other thing here too.
Go ahead, Will.
Looking at this, and I can't quite tell in this picture, and I don't remember looking through the packet if there's another picture, but as far as buffering between the development and the house on 16th there in the corner of 16th and 5th, is there going to be shrubberies or trees? Quite a few of them, I would hope, along there to buffer all that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on the plan. Yeah, there is a buffer plan. It's not been fully executed on the plan that you see, but there'll also be a fence option. There's gonna be a fence on some of it. I think more on the commercial side, I think, the auto repair place, but there is quite a few shrubs and trees in that green space. They're just not fully reflected on the site plan you guys have in front of you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, good discussion. Any more comments? All right, we'll move on and get the meeting back to the mayor.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. Then the final item on the agenda prior to the closed session is a discussion regarding the Uptown Plaza scope of work. Who's leading that discussion? Tom?
That would be me. Thank
Okay.
you. So as give me 1 second here to get. So as we start to see the conclusion of the streetscape come together over the winter, we need to start thinking about the next phase of the Uptown. And as you can see on the slide here, this is the preliminary design that was brought forward during the preliminary design of the streetscape and Uptown areas in the overall Uptown plan. We're at that point now to move into the final design for the plaza and a few other key pieces to that plaza. And I wanted to just provide a briefing to the city council. We don't have to go into great detail. We're not looking for any action tonight. I just want the council to be aware of where we are. We do intend on bringing a scope of work to the council at the next meeting for approval so that we can start that work over the winter and get to a final design by spring. And as you can see, the original design, the preliminary design included the Uptown ice rink as a winter option, and then an outdoor plaza with water features, a number of gardens, play area with a play structure, more artistic in nature, not necessarily your typical, some fire tables and seatings and event stage, and then also the paving and accents in pavers of some sort. Nicholas, can you go to the next page, please? So the scope involves a number of different items. We've got RDG working through them currently. One of them is the renovation of the depot. So this would include what would happen to the depot. The questions that have been coming up in the public, of course, are always, what are we going to do with the depot? This would get us to the point where we would have an answer. We would go through the process. We would solicit, or have public comment periods upon conclusion to see if we're on the right track. And we would likely work through this with the committee that was involved in the streetscape plan. And so what we would be ideally looking to is include the mechanical and electrical for the ice rink, upgraded year-round restrooms, and then a potential for warming area and concessions as a part of that. Upgraded walks around the depot would also be included. If you've been up there, there's a lot of trip hazards. The second item would be the event stage. This would get us to the point of really understanding what that stage is going to consist of, and get into the details. And then, of course, the water features would be included in this, the ice rink, water spray pad, and the stream, and then also the summer plaza, and all of the underground utilities, mechanical, electrical, and lighting that comes along with that project. Next slide there, Nicholas. So we would try to get into the play area. As I said, it was a non-traditional play area, so not necessarily a climbing thing with the slides and swings. This would be something that would probably have some artistic value to it, and be a play structure that could serve dual purposes, both artistic and kid-friendly. So we're excited about that piece. There are some gardens, raised and at-grade plant beds that are a part of that, and irrigation proposed within there. And then also would include a bike lane throughout the corridor, running north-south to make that connection. If you recall from the original Uptown plan, there was the 11th Street plan, the 11th Street Plaza area, a really nice walkway into the plaza going south, and then even continuing south between the old library and the new library was like a smaller mini plaza that could be a walkout outdoor library piece in the future as well. One piece to this, though, that is fairly new, and I just want to touch on it. And I think throughout the process, where there's been an assumption that the caboose was going to be relocated as part of the plan. There are a lot of folks that have that care for that caboose a great deal. There's a lot of questions coming about of what to do with that. internally. And I think even in some of the conversations we've had in broader groups, the conversation of where that caboose goes has kind of varied. But I think the idea is that we would relocate the caboose along the trail corridor, which is the original rail line, and do an area where there would be a tribute to the railroad history of Marion at that location. Because we're going to need to relocate the caboose as a part of this project eventually, we want to have a plan for where it will go. It may be a modified plan. We may get into more details and be able to bring it forward. But I just want the council aware of the fact that we're being very planful in our conversations about where that goes, how it's reflected in the community, understanding that there is historical context to that. And we certainly don't want folks to think that we're being insensitive to that piece of Marion's history. So working with Seth, I'm sure the park board will have some conversation and desire to see details on this as well. But I know we just really haven't highlighted that in the past. It wasn't really a conversation as part of the Uptown plan, but I think it is at this time that we really need to take a peek at what we want to do with that, where it's going to go, and be able to answer some of those broader questions for the public that really has a concern for that facility. So anyway, this is just a sneak peek. I just wanted to give the council a high level view of what we've been working on with RDG. They're gonna supply us the actual scope of work and cost estimates and such to vet at the next meeting. I would point out that this is a part of our capital improvement plan. There are dollars set aside for this, and we can walk through kind of the details of that, I think, at the next meeting. But anyway, I just wanted to provide a brief update. Didn't want to go into all the details, but just so you weren't surprised at the next meeting that we have a scope work coming up for that next phase of the Uptown.
Okay, Grant, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tom, or Nicholas, can we back up to a slide or two, maybe one more? Perfect. So Tom, my question is, do you have any idea of the approximate sizing of the event stage that's contemplated right now?
I don't right offhand. There's been a conversation about how, and I think we'll get into that, whether it needs to be, bigger, smaller. There's been a conversation of whether it needs to be elevated or not, what needs to be brought to it. There's a lot of conversations going on with that, and that'll come out in the final design. Yeah, we're real high level. I think the concept was that we would have a stage facility for the Thursday nights in the park.
Yeah.
And that stage facility would be able to be used with 7th Avenue open facing south, so that you had that whole lawn audience that we have on Thursday nights, and then folks could be in the Plaza area as well. But it would also have the opportunity to turn around if 7th Avenue was closed, and you had a festival where there were maybe people in the street and having something in that manner. So I think it was a dual purpose conversation, but we'll definitely get into the nitty gritty of that as we get to the final design.
Okay, so for full disclosure, in trying to redeem myself for having conveyed an anti-brick street posture here several months ago, I just got to thinking about the caboose. And if that could somehow be factored into part of the structural elements of an event stage. And I will just leave it at that and lower my hand.
Anyone else? Okay, I appreciate the effort to make us aware that this is coming down the line. I think that's important. I know we've talked about that, and I really appreciate that effort. It's an exciting process. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, that brings us to the end of the meeting, and we have a closed session planned. So, Mr. Brandt, will you make the motion?
will have to look that up. So never mind, it's right in front of me. I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session regarding land acquisition as permitted under section 21.51J of the Code of Iowa.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Was that Renee?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's been moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session regarding land acquisition as permitted under section 21.51J of the Code of Iowa. May we have the legal counsel statement, please?
Your Honor, I have reviewed the subject matter for the proposed closed session and find the same to be appropriate under Iowa Code, section 21.51J.
Okay, before we vote, any discussion? All right, Rachel, can you do the roll call, please?
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Mayor Abalosely,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Gedalia,
Yes.
Mr. Sternad.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is approved. And we are now adjourned to closed session, return to open session upon completion. Thank you everyone for joining us.